Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today, it has been a little while since I've done one of these, but the camera position is probably slightly different. Um, so yeah, today we're drawing Absolute Batman. And we're going to be talking about proportions and probably shading, I think is the other thing that I wanted to talk about. But yeah, so some things have changed. Obviously there is now a different fan here, and it is now too warm for the dress. It has gotten past that point now, so yeah, we're here now. And it is very warm, so we're now going to be getting into that point where I'm going to be talking slightly less in these videos because the room gets too warm while I'm doing these, and well, I try and record plenty of them in advance, but you know, we wind up in this situation. Summer, anyways. So you know, here we are. Anyways, yeah, Absolute Batman, big, huge, gigantic Batman. So obviously, we're going to be talking about proportions. We'll have a few things to talk about there. A few things worth noting with how I've drawn him here, and then I think shading is something to talk about. We'll get to that when we get to it. So I'll roll the intro, and then I'll show you what I have. So this is what I've done. It's a very simple pose, just to sort of show things off. So first thing that you'll probably notice is that he doesn't look that huge. And by huge, I mean like vertically. He doesn't look that tall. He looks a bit squat. And so a big problem that you're going to encounter here is that Absolute Batman has very tall ears. Like you can even see here. I'll need to reshape them slightly because they go slightly out, which I don't like here. I think they should be more vertical. But yeah, something that is a sort of key of his design is that he's got gigantic ears, which means that it's going to be difficult to sort of... Because the way that I tend to try and make characters look tall is have them occupy lots of the screen. And the problem is here is that he is occupying the maximum amount of the screen he possibly can, really, and he's also very buff. So that's the thing, and also I've given him a pose where he's sort of leaning in a little bit. So that's making him look more buff, more sort of squat. But he doesn't look tall. Because he should be tall. And so realistically, the way to do that would be to slim him out a little bit. That would make him look a bit taller. But yeah. Scale is also important in that respect. Generally speaking, if you want a character to look tall, you put them in another character who is as tall. But obviously, we don't have really the room for that here, and I'm not interested in adding more work. Because this should, in theory, be an easy one. But yeah, so let me start getting into some of the details here. There's some things which I'm going to have to alter because this is a bit of a crummy base sketch. There's some problems with it. Most of what I spent my time doing with this base sketch was the sort of musculature, which I'm going to need to alter some of this. Like the symbol here is not sitting right in his chest. It needs to sort of be a little different. I need to just sort of reshape it a little bit. And I'll work off of this, but I'll have to reshape it. It's things like his ears. His ears kind of go out a little bit. They need to come in a bit more. They shouldn't sort of come out from the side of his head like that. Makes his head look like pretty wide. It shouldn't be. It should look a little bit more square and flat. So I need to bring his ear, maybe like the start of the ear should be like here somewhere. That looks a bit more accurate. It should be like there and then go up like that. Same thing on this side. This side is more in, but it needs to be further in. And yeah, like he's big and buff. All the musculature doesn't need to change all that much. The belt kind of needs a bit of an adjustment. Boots are mostly fine. The cape looks fine. Absolute Batman's cape is very weird. It's got these multiple segments, as you can see here. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 segments. I think it usually has 3 is usually all you really see, but I think technically speaking it actually has 5. I remember looking this up specifically. But yeah, so he's very big, and again I've talked about proportions in the past, but a quick and easy trick to making a character seem bigger is to make their head smaller, which I think I'll actually probably do in this, is make his head a little smaller. I might even do it right now, just because I don't think it's small enough. So very carefully on all this quickly. The old head in mind. Proportions are very difficult. Proportions are something that takes a long time to get good at, and I wouldn't even say I'm that good at it. Just the type of thing that I've done a lot. I'm going to make his head slightly smaller, like that. Trying to keep it even so that it's not like off center now. So that's now the size of his head. Let's zoom out and see how much that... Yeah, that definitely makes him look a lot bigger now. See? Like I can even undo it and see, and show as an example. We got... That's how big his head was before. Too big. That's now how big his head is. That's way better. I much prefer that. His head should be small so that makes the rest of his body look really big. Because again, that is the easy trick to proportioning, because generally speaking, whenever someone's like really, really big and buff, their head is going to seem small in comparison to the rest of their body. And in art, we emphasize these sorts of things. So here, that's a little trick to emphasize that. It's just to make the head a little bit smaller. In digital art, this is easier because you can change it after the fact. Whereas in traditional art, this can be quite challenging because you'll have to then go back and sort of proportion the whole thing, bit by bit by bit. It takes a while. Especially if the head is one of the first things you draw. Like in my case, I start from the head and work through the rest. So that would have made things much harder if I was doing this originally, but mercifully I'm not. So yeah, I've made his head smaller, and that's now fixed some of our proportional issues a little bit. He still sort of could probably stand to look a little taller, so maybe what I do is I make the thing a little bigger, bump him out slightly in this direction, make him slightly bigger. How does that now look in terms of all the rest of this? His head is about the same size as it was before now, technically. The rest of him is bigger. So that's how big he was before, that's how big he is now. I think I like how big he is now. I think I prefer that. That seems a little better to me. Again, proportioning is this sort of process, for me at least. Whenever you're doing it digitally, this is the sort of process of proportioning, is iteration just over the course of a long time. I drew this base sketch quite a while ago, so this is why I'm able to come back to it and say, okay, these are problems. A lot of the time, whenever I'm doing these art videos, this is how I'll do it, where I'll draw, I'll do a complete base sketch like this one, weeks in advance, and then I'll sort of leave it, and I won't think about it for a while, and then I'll come back to it when I'm doing the art video, and then on the day I'll change things. I'm doing right now, changing things sort of suit what I want from this, because I kind of decided on the topic about 2 minutes before I started doing this, so therefore, you know, this wasn't necessarily intended to be a proportions showcase, but I mean, I decided to make the most of what I already had, and you know, logically that was going to have to be a part of this anyways, because that is part of the nature of the character, because it's just Batman but big. Then shading, something we'll have to obviously talk about later, because that's a pretty late part of the process for me. But the sort of shading environment that I'm probably going to go for is that the middle is going to be the darkest part, and then the outside is where you're going to get your bits of. So his face is going to be dark, but not entirely in shadow. You will still be able to see the face. There was a thing which I was thinking about, which was making the black parts like pure black, like 100% black. But I think that'll be too dark. So I'm not going to do that. I'll make the bat symbol a little bit smaller. Should I make it a bit smaller? Because on any of these, it always goes below the pecs. It always dips down below the pecs. So maybe I should just down a bit. Really, what I should do is down a tiny. Always below the pecs on any of these part that I'm looking at. Generally, it's quite flat, aside from in the actual comic itself, where it's rounded at the bottom and top. But here I've got a rounded bottom and an inverted top. A sort of angular top. What do I do here? I should probably alter that a little bit. So yeah, the edges are generally rounded. this. But yeah, the edges are generally a bit rounded. How it is, and the points themselves are sharp. Otherwise, the rest is rounded. Okay, I'll have to think about that. Obviously, I put in all the spikes and everything, and those are pretty easy to draw. There's little bits of detailing along the sorts of these black parts, which is in the design, but more often than not, you can't see it. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what I do with some of this. But yeah, so as I say, the lighting environment is going to be dark in the middle, light on the edges. I don't know what I'm going to do for my color palette. Probably something a bit orange, because that's what a lot of Absolute Batman tends to be. Is it's all orange. Kind of what I'm looking at here in my reference. It's mostly orange stuff. That's probably what I'll work with. And yeah, so I think I'll just start these details, and then I'll be back to talk about the colors, which could probably be very long. So yeah. Alright, after a very lengthy process, I finally got through the details. So I made some adjustments. I slimmed out his legs slightly because I felt like they were a little too thick, and it just meant that he was making parts of the sort of leg look a bit weird. Trimmed in parts of the feet. He is still standing with a very wide, somewhat unbalanced posture, so he could tumble over. But yeah, what else we got? Oh yeah, I changed the logo quite considerably. I just completely moved it and widened it out. So it covers technically more of his chest now, but it's just in a better position where it's actually somewhat legible. Yeah, right term. I trimmed in the shoulder pads a little bit because I felt like they were a little big. I put in a few more spikes just to sort of fill out the frame a little bit more, to sort of just sort of enhance the silhouette, as it were. Changed some of the musculature a little bit. I sort of made the abs a bit more present, made them a bit more visible, because before I felt like it was a little less ab-like, it just more sort of, yeah, general ripped, not quite abs. Now they're much more ab-like. Something which I didn't go with, which is something that I'm looking at in a lot of this reference, that is that the sort of fabriciness of this bat suit is a lot more prevalent, i.e. you can see sort of stretch marks in the suit a lot of the time along his sort of musculature, but I didn't choose to include that. I just sort of kept it as just generally really buff. That's sort of what I went with on this. But yeah, for the most part I sort of stuck with that kind of a thing. I didn't make any huge adjustments. The face, I made the eyes slightly slimmer, as you can see. Made them slightly slimmer. I didn't actually. I'll put that in right now because I wanted to, which is the slight sort of brow shape. You can kind of see. Just adds a bit more depth to the eyes, which you otherwise wouldn't be getting without that. But yeah, that just applies a tiny bit more depth to his brow. I didn't want to put a huge amount of detailing on like the areas which will be mostly covered in black, even though I did still put lots of detailing on them. The only areas where I thought about this really were the shoes, the cape, and the mask, where I didn't want to put a huge amount of detailing on them because it is just black. I'll be doing a bit of shading and stuff again to sort of change this stuff, i.e. because we're doing center shading and then highlights along the edges. That means that the sort of front here, which is going to be shaped by the sort of round bit here, so that means he'll have he'll have that sort of classic sort of Batman round front sort of shadow that will go over like that. Again, it's not going to be pure black, but it is going to be very dark nonetheless. So that's what I'm going to be going for there, and that will all be part of our shading. But we'll cover that more whenever I'm actually doing the shading. For now, I should probably continue because we're 2 hours and 40 minutes into this recording, and I've still got plenty to do. So I've got to do the colors. I've got to do. I mean, my background is just the gradient. I'll probably do that pretty immediately here as I'm going. But yeah, I'll do these colors and then I'll be back to start the actual shading. So yeah, that'll be not the detailed shading, the painted shading first. So yeah. Alright, that's our colors. I don't know that I'm going to do anything too crazy with the background. I think this almost is good enough. Sort of the kind of thermal kind of thing that we got going on, the orange down to the purple. I think that sort of has feel in and of itself, of just the simplicity there. I think they stick with that just so that it's easier. Because yeah, we don't want to, like I was thinking about obviously putting the bats in the background, 'cause obvious. But I think there's not really much room. He covers so much physical space on the page that I feel like that would be almost a waste of space to just sort of fill the background with these things. So in this instance, I'll keep it simple, and I might think about maybe doing the double texture. Long time since we've done that. Maybe I'll do that in the background. But yeah, so again, obviously I went with the colors as they would obviously be. And so, yeah. Now it is time for the painted shading. Painted shading here, probably not going to take too long. There aren't many colors to shade, so it should be. So what I'm going to do is, as I mentioned before, we're going to be doing center is going to be the darkest part. So the idea being that the middle of them is where all the darks are going to be, and then at the edges they'll be light. Then I'll go through whenever I'm doing my light line, and I'll a little highlight to some of the edges. I'm not going to go too crazy with it because there shouldn't be much of it, especially if we're doing center dark and as light. Shouldn't be too much of a light line going on, maybe along the shoulders. Nothing too crazy, nothing too distracting, because otherwise sort of lose a lot of our natural highlights that we'll have put in, maybe natural or sort of painted and then detailed the highlights that we'll have added in to the drawing. We'll lose them with a light line like that, so we don't need it. And this is obviously stuff that you'll see as I'm doing it, it'll become obvious. But yeah, the shade that we're going to be going for here is a lot of the skin that you're seeing here at the front will become pretty dark. It'll be lost, for the most part. It'll be fairly dark. But it'll still be there. You'll still be able to see it. It'll just be dark. That's sort of what I'm going for here. Is I don't want to lose anything. You'll still be able to see all the stuff. It'll just be dark. So ordinarily, whenever I'm doing my painted shading, I'll do a layer. The layers will usually 60 or 70% in opacity. But here I've gone for 80% because I want it to be a bit darker, a bit heavier. So that's what I'm instead going to go here, is I'm going to be using much darker, much darker colors for this painted shading, and then even the lighter colors aren't going to be super bright, it's a little brighter. So I think I'm probably going to stick obviously with the colors that we got in the background, the purple, even a blue, and the orange maybe yellow, so that we can maybe then turn the whole color palette thermal thing going on here, because that does very much fit Batman with the sort of bluey toned black and grey, and then the yellow and stuff. So yeah, that sort of fits, I guess. So yeah, I think I'll start doing this painted shading, and then I'll come back after that, and I'll show you. Obviously, talk a little bit about what I've done, and then we'll carry on, and then we'll apply some detailed shading and a light line. Yeah, that's pretty much. So yeah. Okay, that is our painted shading done. Now I mentioned, obviously, right center. That's where the darkest part is, dead middle. And then everything around the edges, all highlighted, lighter. What I might actually do is, I've picked my colors here that I'm going to use for my detailed shading, but I'm actually going to pale this out a little bit, because I'm then going to have obviously my highlight around the edges and be white. So, and that's literally just going to follow the very edge here, like the shoulders, then down into the cape, maybe the arms, but not really the legs at all. And so that's what we're going to do there. And it's going to be a subtle sort of highlight. It'll just sort of again apply a little bit of nice sort of a cleanness to the edge. But yeah, so for our detailed shading, we're just going to be obviously working off of what we already have. The painted shading here, as I mentioned, it sort of darkens all these areas. It sort of creates that classic sort of Batman shape of the sort of the shadow on the face, where it's sort of this round little shadow that then tucks along inside the face like that. And then obviously with the detailed shading, I'm going to darken pretty much all of this. I'm going to be a bit haphazard with my detailed shading, just for the sake of making things darker, making things darker as well. And much the same way that I bumped up my painted shading to 80%, I've bumped up my detailed shading to 40%. Apparently it would be 30% with the opacity I go for here. But yeah, you can kind of see what I'm going for here, I imagine. So I think I'm just going to carry on. I will do the detailed shading. I will then outline and the first gradient map. Then I'll talk about that stuff as I'm wrapping up. So yeah. Okay, so that is our detailed shading, light line, and first gradient map all done. So, they're cracking there. Yeah. Obviously, I decided to really deepen those shadows on the front of him, and so now we're left with very dark shadows, and it enhances the sort of monster vibe that this Batman has, which is why I chose to go with that sort of shading, is again to emphasize the monstrous shape that he's got going on, especially given that his scale is not, his stature is not really emphasized by the pose that we've got here, by virtue of the space that we're left with. We don't have enough real space to sort of demonstrate how tall he is, or anything, any sort of relative object to show his scale. So we've just got to use stature as what we've got here. So, as I mentioned before, I went for the very thermal color palette of where it's the sort of blue into purple, into red, into orange, into yellow. So we've got that sort of thermal scaling, and I've decided to go with a soft light layer as my first gradient map, but overlay also works. Overlay is very dark, so we might put on our other gradient maps before we think about it. I have kept this gradient map very high. It's 80%. That's a lot higher than I would normally put it. I would ordinarily put a gradient map at like 60. Alright, so duplicate. Now we're going to want this to be a luminosity. This will be very dark, so this is going to want to be low. It's also going to be dim. So wait, what does this look like below? Below it's darker, we want that. Let's set it to be 20% dark. We don't, it's also very dim, as I mentioned. Now we're going to want a color burn for this. Middle is dimmer. Below that is very dim. Above, and then make it low, like 10%. What if this is an overlay then? That's an overlay. This just becomes very sort of absorbed by that color palette. Yeah, we still want the white to seem clear, and I think on overlay, on overlay it's still very white, but the rest of our white is maybe a little overemphasized, if anything, because this should sort of blend a tiny bit at least. The edges shouldn't be too accentuated. Maybe I need another gradient map. Maybe that's what I'm missing. I need a fourth one. What would I possibly make it? Problem. Lighten layer? No, probably don't want that. Probably not. Multiply? No. Nothing helping with what we've got here. None of these are particularly helping. No, I don't think we want that. Delete this. This doesn't work. Back through all that. Full rigmarole. Right, we're just going to need to use our texture to try and well, I don't know what the term would be, but to make it the opposite of dim, sort of brighten it up a tiny bit, but enough where it's still preserving our shadows. I don't want to lose depth of shadow that we got going on here. What's funny is that the orange in the background has just fully become red on the monitor below me, but on the screen it still has at least. So I can see what I'm doing here. So what does our texture look like on 20%? It's still visible on the background. And it definitely brightens things up. See what I'm going to do. I am going to do my double texture. So when I say double texture, what that means is I make a duplicate, I flip it horizontally, and then I make it more intense on the background. So I'm going to make this 35%. That's much more on the background now. But it only applies to the background because it's underneath all our other layers. But our original texture is also still applying to that, so we've now got more texture on the background than on the character, which is what I want. So there we go. That's basically that done. Yeah, I mentioned a little bit more texture on the background than on the character, which is kind of what I want here. I only want it to subtly apply to the character because we still want those shadows to remain deep and strong, but we want our background to maybe get a little bit more life in it, more texture, just so that it looks more interesting. Because with what we've got here, you can see that the sort of the orange and the purple must sort of bleed together a little bit. There's more of an accentuated blend now between them in such a way where sort of it has a bit more texture to it. It has a bit more life to it, a little bit more going on there, more interesting. So that's kind of what we wanted there. That livens things up a little bit. But yeah. So that was Absolute Batman. The absolutely huge Batman. So yeah, we talked a little bit about proportions, we talked about our shading. We talked about shading more than anything else, but I feel like this was a bit of a long one. I mean, realistically, we're at kind of the average length here, 4 and a bit hours. So generally, that's sort of the average. I managed to get it all done in the one sitting, so I mean, that's better than I've been doing recently. Granted, it has been a very long time since I've recorded one of these. I probably could have gotten this done a lot faster, but I wanted to sort of give it a little bit more time. I mean, I can afford to take a little bit more time with these. I'm only doing them bi-weekly now. I mean, I often. Yeah, so I enjoyed this one well enough. Simple one. I got to talk about some things we don't talk about very often. I don't normally go too into detail on shading, but that's what I did here. So I think it's nice to be able to go into detail on some of these things that I don't normally done all that much here. Because yeah, it's again, as I say, it's nice to sort of get into the nitty gritty on some stuff. And yeah, I'm happy with this. It was a fun one. There was some challenges, obviously, because I mean, I got very. I think I maybe went a little too much on the details, like on the actual drawing of the details, because that just probably took way too long. It took over 2 hours to draw the details. Way too long. way too long for that. So. Well, next time will probably be an easier one, because the next time is a simple one as well. Granted, I do have to prepare on that one. See, I suppose you'll see that in 2 weeks' time. So yeah, I think I'll just wrap up and then I'll leave you. So if you liked the video, do whatever you do, whether that be liking it or not. I would have liked it, but I can't make you do that, so I'll suggest it if I have done. If you would like to subscribe, I'd very much enjoy that. I'd be happy with that. please do. You don't have to, but you can. I would like it if you did. You don't need to be. Our button is. I imagine you know where it is. It's like that. If you have a suggestion for what you'd like to see me draw in the future, you could leave a comment. Again, you can do that. I'd like it if you did, but only if you did so polite. I don't want to write comments. So again, if you want to suggest something, feel free. Don't be. And yeah, if you choose to watch the next video, I'll see you next time. So with all that said, I'll say thank you.